Okay, folks, we are gonna get started at 32, and we're gonna call this meeting to order. And Lori is going to share the upcoming housekeeping announcements. Thank you, Lori.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. This is our CEA Board Member Lori Tejeda. Here are today's housekeeping announcements. For those of you here at the Wharf Injured Building, the microphones will be on throughout the meeting. Please remember to speak clearly, one person at a time, and please say your name when you start talking so people online and on the phone can follow the discussion. We have no online board participants, nor no board participants today. For community members planning to speak during public comment periods, please come to the microphone or to the podium if you are able, so the microphone can pick up your voice. Online participants, click raise hand, that button in the webinar controls, or if you're on the phone, press *9 to raise your hand, *6 to unmute. And please raise your hand early so those of us who are staff supporting this meeting don't miss you. Public comment may be limited to 3 minutes at the chair's discretion. Emailed comments are being accepted at publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org until the chair closes the public comment period for that agenda item. If you are having difficulty and you're participating remotely, if you're having difficulty with your connection, if you can, please call or text us at 707-613-0622, 707-613-0622, or by emailing publiccomment@redwoodenergy.org. Tricia first.
All right, thank you, Lori. We will do our roll call. And do we have any remote participation today? I see we don't have the screen, so I'm going to assume no. Okay. All right. Then we'll do our roll call.
Okay, so Director Arroyo here. Vice Chair Bauer is absent. Director Jorgensen here. Director Mobley here. Director Myers is absent. Director Ramos is absent. Director Stefani here. Chair Schaefer here. Director Tuttle is absent. Director Wilson here. Director Booth here. And there is a quorum for regular business. Thank you.
Okay, we will move to item number 2, reports from member entities. Does anybody have anything that they would like to report? Okay, not seeing any reports. We will now move to oral and communication. So this is a time provided to address the board on matters that are not on the agenda. At the conclusion of communications, the board may respond to statements, and any action that will be set for a future agenda or referred to staff. So do we have anybody here in the public wishing to comment on items not on the agenda? Not seeing anybody making the move to the podium. Is there anybody online? Nothing online. All right. No, we had one submitted written comment. That will move us to item 4, the consent calendar. All matters on the consent calendar are considered to be routine and are enacted in one motion. There's no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is required, that item can be removed from consent separately. The end of the reading of consent calendar, board members or members of the public can request that an item be removed for separate discussion. Item 4.1, approve the minutes of September 26, 2024 board meeting. Item 4.2, approve disbursements report. Item 4.3, accept financial reports. Item 4.4, accept quarterly regulatory and legislative policy engagement report. Item 4.5, appoint Elizabeth Burks as RCEA Executive Director and approve the agreement for employment of Executive Director. Item 4.6, authorize the Executive Director to execute the 2024-2027 PG&E funding agreement for $32,178,044 upon final review and approval by RCEA General Counsel, and upon full execution, authorize the Executive Director to issue solicitation for consultant and subcontractor services to implement the Northern California rural then regions covered by PG&E funding. And item 4.7, approve resolution 2024-14, approving the form of and authorizing the execution of the Hatchery Road Solar A feed-in tariff power purchase agreement with RPCA Solar 5 LLC. I am going to pull items 4.5 and 4.7. Are there any other members of the board that would like to pull an item from consent? All right, and are there any members of the public that want to pull from consent? Not seeing. Okay, so I will take a motion for 4.1 through 4.4 and 4.6.
Second.
So we have a motion by Director Arroyo and a second by Director Mobley. We're all here so we can do a show of hands vote. So all in favor, aye. Motion passes. And yeah, so okay, we'll move into the items pulled. I pulled item 4.5, which is to appoint Elizabeth Burke for CEA Executive Director, which is super exciting. Our subcommittee gave the staff a lot and did a lot of interviews, and we're very excited about this appointment and just wanted to welcome Beth and give her an opportunity to come up and say anything if she would like to. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. I just also wanted to have excitement for taking on this role. It's like my wildest dream, right? Just really the opportunity of a lifetime. I'm so grateful for going through this process and the confidence that you're all showing me by putting into this position. I am beyond excited to work with our CAC team. I really, I've had the opportunity to work with them through my involvement with the CAC for a number of years now. And I know I'm just walking into really, one of the best teams in the whole region. So grateful for that. Really looking forward to furthering our CEA's mission and just enhancing collaboration throughout the region and beyond. So thank you again. And I can't wait to, have a chance to have one-on-one talks with all of you and, make sure I'm understanding what you all need from the executive director and really just hope I can hit the ground running in January and very, very much looking forward to it.
Thank you. Thank you, Beth. Thank you. All right. Are there any other public comments on item 4.5? Yes, or yes, comment from the board. Sorry, yeah.
No, I just wanted to thank all the directors who were on the committee, subcommittee, and the people, I guess the CAC also weighed in. Thank you, staff. I know it was, everybody's busy and this was a huge lift, but so important. So really, thanks a lot for doing all that. Thank you.
All right, and not seeing any other comment in the building, I will wait for a motion.
I'll move to approve the appointment of Hertz as our CEA Executive Director and approve the agreement for employment.
Second. All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. And motion passes unanimously. And welcome, Beth, and we're looking forward to working with you. And then I also pulled 4.7. It's not ready yet, so we're just gonna push that to a future agenda. We have to have a motion for that. And okay. Onward. So that's gonna take us to item 6, which is old CCE business. And we do have a quorum for CCE business, so that's going to be item 6.1, which is the Energy Risk Management Quarterly Report. And Jacqueline Carr is here to give that update.
Hello, everyone.
Yes. Put it in there.
You have to click there as well.
Yes, thank you. Happy to see everyone, be here in person. I'm because I able to make the last one university, so glad to be here. This is a standard energy risk management quarterly report, focused on financials for this year. And as you can tell from all the green text, it's going to be a positive one. So that's always exciting for me to come up here and give green text news instead of red text news. And actually I also have some verbal updates for some things that have shifted on rate design in the past 24 hours, actually, that I can speak to that aren't really in this deck. But first, one significant change that we made in the deck after discussing with RCA staff is we're no longer showing an update from the previous quarterly presentation that I've given, but instead are showing an update from the budget that the board adopted, the most recently adopted budget, which I think makes a lot of sense. And you aren't like trying to remember, wait, what happened 3 months ago? And so you're like, you can go back to the same budget on everything. So it's just jump into it. On the revenue side, in 2024, we see retail revenues coming in lower than forecasted and lower than budgeted. This is primarily due to forecasted load being slightly down. It's been a cool summer, relatively speaking, in California. Loads never really got very high, and so retail revenues are therefore depressed with the as well. And that's true for Redwood, true for basically every other entity that was, looking at their loads at, here in California this year. For the forecast for 2025 and 2026, based on, this is based on an update that, PG&E provided for their rate forecast several months ago. As you can see, that was positive news, so, improvement of $2.7 million, in 2025 and $8.4 million in 2026. The third bullet there, that the PG&E fall update expected to be released this week. It was actually released late last night. We have not yet had a chance to get it into Redwood's portfolio to model exactly what the changes are financially, but we have read through the entire document. There is still some policy items up in the air on both the generation rate that PG&E will be charging its customers, and that Redwood would then mirror with a slight rate discount. There's also some up in the air policy items on the power cost and difference adjustment rate. I'll get more into that in a couple of slides, but what was initially set forth in the update for that was issued at the end of yesterday evening would have been significantly actually more positive than the numbers that you're going to see now. Probably on the magnitude of double-digit $1 million. So that's really great. As I stated, there's some policy wrangling happening, but I would say that at the very least, it's not going to be any worse than what you're seeing here. Not going to stake my reputation on it because things always change in this industry, but I think that's where the wins are like this one. On the net power costs are also down, which is fantastic news. Energy prices have been down both in 2024 and in future years. As everyone here on the board knows, California has been on this big endeavor of building more and more renewables and battery storage within the state. And it seems like power prices are finally catching up to that fact, and that we have more resources in the supply stack, and that is therefore pushing pricing down. So that's positive. There's been movement up and down on RECs and RA pricing, but overall, I would say those resources or products pricing is also down. So that's also positive. Still quite high compared to a few years ago, but down from where they were a few months ago when this budget was initially set. And then one other item I would note that's not really captured here on the slide, but as the board is aware, we've moved into a new RA regime for 2025, which is a slice of day RA regime. Instead of 1 hour of RA compliance on a monthly basis, there's a number that you need to comply with for every hour. So 24 numbers that you need to comply with on a monthly basis. That's made it a lot more complicated, both to do the right power procurement, as well as to predict costs, because there's different products that you can buy that help in some hours and don't help in other hours, or there's some products that help in all of the hours. So it's just made it a lot more complicated to predict pricing. We tried to stay relatively conservative in our assumptions for 2025 RA pricing, and then we try to beat that conservative assumption in the actual procurement that we've done. As of today, it's looking like Redwood will be fully compliant for the year ahead RA compliance showing, which will be filed a week from today, and we'll be able to bring that in at cost significantly below what we were previously at. Because basically, my portfolio manager saw that as a challenge to be like, oh, this is what we think, this is the number we have to beat, how much can we beat it? And they've been really kind of piecing things together for a jigsaw puzzle back process to get our RCH compliance. That's something we're really excited about. All right, so moving on with kind of the financial outlook, what are the main things that are affecting the financial outlook? As already discussed, the PG&E rate changes are the biggest drivers here, given that Redwood adopts, uses the PG&E rates to set its own rates with a discount. Another item that is not explicit here in the financial outlook, but is something that we should be discussing, is the financial security requirement calculation. More on that in a couple of slides. And then one piece that impacts both the rates that RCA customers see as well as the prices that RCA pays for some of the products it procures are the market price benchmark. And that impacts in two ways, which we'll get into on the next slide. So basically, increase in the market price benchmark means that the PCIA, that is a rate charged to regular customers and as well as bundled customers, that rate goes down, which is good news. But an increase in the market price benchmark means that some of the products that Redwood is procuring goes up. So first, what is the financial security requirement? This is a item that the CPUC requires all CCAs to hold, that is meant to secure if a CCA were to go out of business and all of those customers would be put involuntarily back with the investor-owned utility, who is the provider of the last resort in California. Then what is the cost that that investor-owned utility would suddenly have to manage the administration burden of bringing all those customers back in and buying power products for them, kind of on the spot market. So the financial security requirement is recalculated every 6 months. And for, I believe, the history of Redwood's being in operation as a CCA, the FCR has been sort of at its minimum threshold, which right now is 147,000, which is not really a lot of money when you think of it in the scheme of things. Given the dollars that we deal with here in the energy market, right? That's not a very large sum when you think about 6 months worth of costs. And it's calculated through a complex equation that is set forth by CPUC policy. The expectation is the financial security requirement will be going up next year at the next recalculation at the end of this year. What that will be is still under discussion, because while there is an equation that describes how it's supposed to be calculated, as in all things energy market policy, there's a lot of nuance and entities can debate. The item I'd say here is that CalCCA is very actively involved in this discussion, trying to support having a FSR that is lower than investor and utilities would like to put it. And we will see where that settles. When the FSR is recalculated, that is cash that would have to leave Redwood's account and then go sit into an account that would not be managed by Redwood, so not be cash that you would have on hand. It's still your money, but you no longer have the ability to invest in organization until the next FSR is recalculated. So that's just something to be aware that is coming at some point in the coming months. Market price benchmarks. So market price benchmarks are a calculation that is done throughout the state by all load serving entities that are CPUC jurisdictional, where the CPUC asks entities, how much did you pay for RA over this time period? How much did you pay for PCC1 recs, all these different products? How much did you pay for it? And then the CPUC uses those numbers, and they're all confidential, obviously, to calculate what is sort of the market price for these products that are not traded openly, but are traded in a bilateral way. And then that benchmark price is utilized to calculate the value of the different products that are in the investor-owned utilities portfolio, some of which were purchased on behalf of Redwood's customers before they left to become Redwood customers, back when they were bundled customers. So it then flows into the power cost adjustment calculation, which I'll have another slide on that, breaking that down a little bit further, but just to go into what are the market price benchmarks, we have market price benchmarks set for energy. That is a product that is in fact openly traded and has a forward price curve. But the CPUC calculates a kind of an MPV for energy, both on peak and off peak energy. An MPV is calculated for RA, and its distinct flavors of system, local, and flexible RA. And then for renewable energy, both PCC1s as well as PCC2 and PCC3 calculation. And as the second main bullet says, market price benchmarks are used for sort of two main functions. One is they're used to help calculate the PCIA, that both the investor-owned utilities funding customers as well as our CA's customers pay. And the next slide breaks that down a little further. And then they're also used to set the prices for the voluntary allocations that some CCAs have voluntarily opted into from the investor-owned utilities. And Redwood is one of these CCAs. Specifically, when the voluntary allocation process opened up a couple of years ago, Redwood staff, in discussion with TA staff, decided to opt for a partial allocation of what it could get for renewable energy from PG&E's portfolio. And the rationale behind this was that, you know, one, we don't know exactly what the market price benchmark will be, but it'll be around the market average. So if you want that renewable energy in your portfolio, this is a reasonable way to get, you know, an average cost renewable product into your portfolio. But moreover, part of the voluntary allocation that PG&E was offering were long-term RECs. So RECs that would be a 10-year contract or longer in length. And that's valuable to Redwood because that helps meet RPS compliance requirements. And was particularly important because of the delay in the Central Missouri project coming online, which is already supplying test energy to the grid. I think 98.8% of the panels are online and operational, and we're really excited to have that project go fully live in a couple of weeks. Anyway, so Redwood opted into getting part of the voluntary allocation. So with the market price benchmarks going up, that means that portion of Redwood's environmental procurement of the RECs that you're getting from PG&E through this, the price of that has gone up. But it also impacts, so skip one more slide to here, also impacts the PCIA. And the way it impacts it is actually pretty important. Basically, for all of these resources that are in PG&E's portfolio that were procured on behalf of all bundled customers before Redwood customers left to join Redwood, those resources can be above market in costs. So their costs are higher than the revenues that they gained in the market. So the way that the PCIA is calculated is first, what are the costs of those resources? Like what are the PPA costs for all these resources, or for the ones that PG&E owns and operates, and the cost to keep these projects maintained and operating. And then you subtract out the value that these resources earn in the market. What they earn in the energy market is very clear, right? It's just what revenues do they receive from the CAISO. But what is the value of the RA that they're providing, and what is the value of the RECs that they're providing? That's less clear because that's a bilaterally traded market. And so that's what the market price benchmarks are used to do. They're used to help determine what that portfolio value should be. And then so cost minus value gets you to what the PCI rate is set at, which is just what are the total above market costs net of value that all customers need to pay, since these resources are procured on behalf of all customers back. So if we go back to the slide that I skipped over, and I go back. Sorry. Also can't go forward anymore. Okay, here we go. So here's where the market price benchmarks were set for 24 and where they're currently forecast to be for 25. So you note that there's nothing in 24 for the final market price benchmarks for energy. That's because while we forecast what it might be in the future, when it comes to actual 2024, it's just what was the energy revenue that all of the resources in this portfolio earned. So you'll need to calculate what's the actual final numbers. But you do need to calculate what's the value of the RA and the RPS. So you can see that the pricing there was relatively low for 24. And this represents the lag that we see in RA prices have been steadily increasing over time. The market price benchmark is sort of a lagging indicator of that. So the market price benchmark was really showing prices that occurred in 23. And so that was used to set pricing for 2024 for the market price benchmark. Now we're trying to forecast what's going to go into the market price benchmark for 25. And we're starting to look at RA prices over the past year, which things were higher. So you can see that the system price forecast for 25 RA is now $42, whereas it was 28 previously. And so that is actually, overall, that's just the RA price increasing is just an overall net benefit to Redwood, because this is going to decrease the PCA and you aren't making any sort of voluntary RA application. However, the RPS adder, you can see it is also increasing significantly from what it was set in 24 to what the forecast is for 25. And so that is going to be more of a mixed bag for Redwood, because it will lead to a decrease in the PCA that your customers are paying, which is great news. However, it will lead to an increase in the amount that you are paying for the RECs you're getting through the voluntary application. So that's sort of the market price benchmark details. So we move on a couple of slides is, going kind of just digging in deeper on the PCA, is that traditionally, the PCA has been a positive value, which means it's a net negative to Redwood and its customers. And it's adds a cost to Redwood's customers because the market price benchmarks were low compared to what the costs were that actually occurred. Now that the market price benchmarks are increasing, that's causing the PCA to then decrease. But then, as I just said, we're seeing RA prices drop, we're seeing environmental prices drop. So then in the future, the market price benchmark will go back down, and then the PCA will go back up, and we go through this kind of swinging process in the market, which is very unfortunate from a rate setting perspective. This was the world that we're left with when you go through all this policy complications. So if we look at historically, how has the PCA changed over time? This is in dollars, or really cents, over on the left, and going through time from 2012 through today, you can see that it has zigzagged quite a bit. And I think I joined Redwood right when we were at the I joined right when it bumped up to the high water mark. And so I think my first few presentations to the board were always like bad news, because the PCA was so high and it was leading to quite a net revenue shortfall. For the past few years, we've been existing in a world where the PCA has been relatively low, and we expect that to continue for at least another year or so before it probably starts bumping back up again. So that kind of leads to kind of the final, so what slides of what is the annual net revenue forecast for 2024 and future years. And it's positive compared to what you saw in the May budget. So first for October, for 2024, you can see that there's a slight increase overall in the expected annual net revenue forecast. This is primarily costs have been slightly lower than expected. Revenues, as mentioned, have stayed the same to be slightly less because of less loads. But overall improvement for your 2024. This is pretty locked and loaded unless we have some wild pricing event in December. And even then, it's still pretty locked and loaded. So this is positive news. For 25, we're no longer in a deficit. Right now, the forecast is positive by 3.3 million. So that's great news. And as mentioned, with the latest rate items that PG&E issued last night, I would say that the 3.3 million is probably a floor. Again, barring any wild market uproar. And it may be, may creep into double digits in terms of the net revenue the next time we run this analysis, incorporating the latest rate updates we need. And then 2026, a little further out, but also, a positive of 8 million, which is an increase from the 6.7 million in the budget forecast. And I think one more slide here is just the 2-year cash projection. So, previously we had, for the time period October through of 24 through end of September 26, it kind of ended at almost the same place it started, maybe a teeny bit lower, in fact. Now we see growth over the time period. So you can see that we're starting a little bit lower than we had previously expected. That's actually really just a modeling thing because we've had bills come in a little bit earlier than we were previously modeling. You can see that, by the time we get to early 25, they're basically the same because it was just kind of a when is the bill coming in question. It came in the summer versus like at the end of the year. But then you can see that steady growth as we move through this, positive, improvement from what we were expecting back in the budget was set in May. And then if we just look at the cash history and projection, overall, this is a great positive, movement forward and Redwood's looking quite positive. Just quickly, briefly touching on where we have the forecast to generate in PCA. You can see the generation rate increasing a little bit over the time horizon compared to what was in the budget. And you can see that the PCA, again, for what we currently have modeled, it goes up slightly in 25. I think now we would have going down closer to 0 based on what was issued last night. And then it's down again, close to 0 in 26. So that's all positive. And then forward price curves, it's been a little choppy, but overall, if you look at the solid lines, which are the current forecast versus the dash, which are the historical, when we set the budget, you can see that the solid lines are pretty consistently below the dash lines. In line with what I said earlier, that forward energy prices have increased. And that leads me to the last slide. I know I talked a lot, lots of numbers, glad to take any questions.
Jacqueline, all right, yeah, any questions or comments on the report?
I'll make one. So I really like that we look at the slides, and, oh, green is good, red is bad. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's what I feel like, that's the level of my understanding.
It's a lot. There's a lot of complicated things moving around. I'm glad that's helpful. It's helpful for me too sometimes.
Yeah, go ahead now.
This may be a question for other folks in the room, but does this mean that we are kind of recalibrating to get closer to kind of what our original goals were as far as our power mix? Because the forecast is and because the current pricing is favorable and all of that, can you give a kind of a little detail on that?
So we spent a lot of time reviewing this presentation ahead of time. I think it's too early to make decisions on this information, and I wanted the takeaway to be more that the trend is looking more positive and not so much what the exact numbers are. And we still are planning on bringing this back to the board to make those decisions either in January or February. What's modeled there is still a pause for 24-25, but that 2026 number has us returning to our renewable procurement goals. But the board will get to see it when the numbers are a little bit more solid to make actual decisions.
We would expect the rates for PG&E to be finalized in December of this year, occasionally lingered into January. So at that point in time, once PG&E has a firm rate set, that might give staff a lot more clarity on where the budget is going.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments on the board? Yeah, go ahead, Frank.
On the
Colorization.
deal with the Sandrini operation, California is putting out more solar. Does our Sandrini thing move around and affect with that? The California's putting out more?
Yeah, so Sandrini, back when it was signed in 2019, standalone storage was still like often getting signed as a resource. And then in the past few years, we've seen a shift to solar resources only really getting contracts if they're built with a storage facility, because there's so much solar going onto the grid in the middle part of the day that really depresses prices. However, there's two factors that I think make Sandrini a little bit less, it makes me less concerned about that for Sandrini in particular. One is that staff, when they signed the PPA, they signed it to be financially settled at a trading hub rather than at the exact P node where the energy gets put onto the grid. As you might imagine, a lot of these solar resources get built right next to each other in the Central Valley where it's sunny all the time. And then energy prices in that exact location go through the floor, just, plummet into negative values. However, since Sandrini is financially settled at a trading hub, it's not just solar value that is determining the price of that trading hub, but also thermal resources and other resources that are putting energy onto the grid at the same time. And so that pushes the trading hub price up. It may still go negative, but it won't go negative to the same level that Sandrini actually puts power onto the grid goes negative. So that makes Sandrini less exposed to negative pricing than the other would otherwise be as a solar resource. So that's a really great piece of the DPA. The second piece is that staff were like, oh, we have this big solar resource coming online and we don't have a battery next to it, and that's a problem. And so they have negotiated with the developer to add a battery onto the resource about a year from now. That battery should go online. And so when that battery is online, that will again allow TA and staff to help manage the exposure to the negative price during the solar hours, because rather than having the solar go onto the grid when the price is quite negative, it can go into the battery and be discharged in the evening when the price is quite high. So I think between those two factors, that really protects Sandrini and Redwood from the negative price and the other price. Yeah, so does that answer your question, really, Frank?
Yeah. Thank you.
And one comment, I'm sorry, I didn't include it. The cash curves here do not include a increase in financial security requirement. So because that's not set yet, we don't know what that number would be. But if that were to be 1 million or 2 million, you would see the corresponding drop in cash on hand.
Do we gain interest on that money that we put aside for the financial security requirement that benefits us?
I think we're gonna have to phone a friend on this one. I'd be very surprised if you don't, because that's enough money that it should be in the interest-bearing account. But Richard or anyone else on staff? Dave,
I don't know, I would have to ask Lori. I think it's been such a small amount. I don't know, it wasn't anything that we were tracking, but I think it's something we would advocate for if we're having to post.
Lori's online and can.
Oh, perfect, thank you.
Lori, you can unmute and speak.
Thanks. Yeah, so we do earn a small amount of interest that I record every month, and it shows up on our profit and loss statement as interest earned.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions, comments, or we can open it up to the public as well? Are there any public comments on our quarterly report? Anybody online? No. All right, and then I think we take a motion to accept this report as well. We have a motion, I'll second, and a second. Director Bauer and second by Director Mobley. We're all here, so show of hands, all in favor, aye. Unanimous. Thank you, Jacqueline, and always informational. Won't process. But we'll, as Sherry said, I like seeing the dumbing it down. Thank you very much. All right, so that's going to take us to item 6.2, which is going to be a motion to reconsider the statewide allocation of attributes from the Diablo Canyon nuclear plant due to some general confusion and issues with voting last time. I guess I can make a motion. I'm going to make a motion to reconsider this item, and hopefully there's somebody out there that wants to second that. But I'm just going to explain a little bit more to it. I think that now we have a little bit more information from our CAC, and also actually having a full board here to discuss this item, I think is going to be beneficial as well. And so sorry to the board members that were here with us last time for any confusion on that. And so I'm going to make a motion to consider to reconsider this statewide allocation of carbon-free attributes from Diablo Canyon. Is there a second for that?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a second from Director Mobley. And it doesn't have to be, the second doesn't have to be somebody that was at that meeting, is that part of the rules? Okay. And then do we take public comment on the motion to reconsider? Okay, all right, so we'll take, public comment on this motion to reconsider. Is there any public comment? Not seeing it, none online, all right.
There is.
Oh,
Oh, yeah. if you're taking
well,
one of the
then there
reconsider,
will be
then
the
vote
item,
later.
right, so then we'll, yeah, on the actual motion at that point, all right. Great, so let's vote on that, all in favor, so reconsider the item, aye. All right, so that is, and all opposed to reconsider, and we have one opposed, all right, and then water district is not voting. Okay, motion passes, and so we will go in, do we have a staff report or any update?
And while Richard and Faith are coming up, we are gonna let the board decide whether or not to do a little bit more summary, since a lot of you have heard this before, but since we have more people here that weren't here last time, we can get into as much detail as we did the original time, so this will be a little bit more interactive of how much background information is.
Choose your own adventure. Yeah, I mean, I would just go for it. You got, I mean, folks that weren't here, we probably would appreciate that, correct? Yeah. Yes. All right.
Eileen, did you want to offer the first slide like you did with the CAC?
Sure, yeah, Chair Schaefer, covered a lot of it already, but, so we did bring this to the board at September 26th. There was, an attempted vote that did not pass, and the result was, not taking action, which was not accepting the allocation. We did discover process error and misinformation given about the vote count, which we felt could have had bearing on the vote. And the decision was made to bring it back for a motion to reconsider, which you just did. And, you know, as Chair Schaefer mentioned, you know, the glass half full is that this did allow us time to take it to the community advisory committee and get input. And so we've had a more robust community involvement by delaying the decision and having to reconsider it tonight.
Across the regulatory lens of policy manager. Yeah, so the community advisory committee did choose to recommend that the board accept the allocation. So, what am I supposed to
Try that now.
pointing?
Working? No.
Oh, okay. So the Diablo Canyon power plant is located in Morro Bay at Villa Beach in 3CE's territory, which is Central Coast Community Energy. It was opened in 1985 and provides 10% of the energy to the California energy grid. So it's a pretty substantial reliability resource to the state. In 2016, PG&E, who's the operator of the plant, retired the plant with a retirement date of 2025. There's 2 units in the plant. One was set to be retired in 2025, and then the next one was set in 2026, I believe. The reason that they gave is that there was significant increased costs of operations for the plant, and it wasn't economically viable. CPUC saw that decision in, let's see. They saw that decision and approved the application in 2020. And then in that decision, the CPUC, that was in September of 2020, they also ordered for load serving entities in the state of California to purchase replacement resources for Diablo Canyon for the same amount of capacity that would have gone offline. So in August of 2020, just before the CPUC decision, there were some pretty severe heat waves and rolling outages in the state of California. And along with an expected delay of resources and another rolling outages in 2022, the legislature passed SB 846 to prevent additional outages. This invalidates the CPUC's approval to retire the plant and requires PG&E and state agencies to take all actions necessary to extend Diablo Canyon power plant operations. So through another proceeding, the CPUC issued a decision to extend the operations of Diablo Canyon in 2030, with both units coming online slightly different dates. So as it stands right now, California energy providers automatically receive an allocation of the reliability benefits of Diablo Canyon that would be the resource adequacy or RA. They have an option to accept clean energy attributes from the plan. So those would go towards our clean and renewable procurement targets. So far, we have not accepted those allocations in the past due to our risk policy. We have 30 days from, there's going to be another allocation window for the extended operation. So that's why this is coming to the board now, is that this is a new window of opportunity to decide whether we're going to do those allocations or not. That allocation should be released any day now, expected in early November, and we'll have 30 days from then to accept or reject the allocation. If it's accepted, we'll have nuclear shown on our power content label, which goes for customers. And if we do not accept it in either case, we will be paying for the smaller.
RCEA will be paying or the customers will be paying.
So just to kind of go into this a little bit further, if we accept the allocation, we receive the clean energy benefits customers already paid for. No new additional nuclear power generation or development will occur. This is an extension that is already approved. So if we don't accept it, they aren't going to retire Diablo Canyon. It's still going to continue operating. And it will show up on our power cost label. If we reject it, we do not receive the clean energy benefit. We continue to not encourage any additional nuclear power generation or development. And we continue receiving the RA benefits, but we do not have it listed on our power cost label. So critics of both scenarios have said that if enough LOCs accept the allocation, then it may show to policymakers in the state that there is an appetite for nuclear power. Critics of rejecting the allocation have said that by receiving the RA benefits and not disclosing it on our power content label, that is not transparent. Right, I'm gonna let this go to the
Richard Engel, Director of Power Resources, good afternoon. We've had a prohibition since launching our program on including nuclear power in our resource portfolio, and I'll show you the language on that next slide. To align with that language in our risk policy, we've been declining carbon free allocations of nuclear power all along that were available to us the last several years, but have been accepting allocations of hydropower because that helps us reduce the overall emissions of our portfolio without being at odds with anything in our risk policy. This allocation, though, is new because it's tied specifically to that 5-year extension of Diablo Canyon's operation that Faith mentioned. And that coupled with the increases that we've been seeing in resource prices, which Jacqueline talked about, that driven up that market price benchmark for RPS and for carbon-free power as well. This has just motivated us to be looking at what our alternatives are, and it seemed like it wouldn't be responsible for us to not bring this to the board for consideration. So this is what it says in our risk policy. It says that nuclear is not allowed to be part of our portfolio, but it does also have this language about exceptions that may be needed for short-term transactions. In consultation with our general counsel, Nancy, we staff came to the conclusion that asking the board to consider this 1 year at a time could be considered a short-term transaction. So we've not brought you a proposal to approve doing this all the way through 2030 when Diablo Canyon closes. We are aware of at least in 1 or 2 cases that some other CCAs have framed it that way as a longer-term decision, that they don't have an explicit prohibition on nuclear in their own policies. That's it for that one. When we brought this to the board last month, we framed this as 3 alternatives. Under scenario 1, which is what we came away from the meeting with last time, was just not accepting the nuclear allocation. The numbers over in the right-hand boxes are updated from what we saw last time, because last time when our financial outlook was worse, those net revenue numbers were all negative numbers, and they're positive now. these numbers are, just as a note, based on our overall power procurement and power sales revenue. So these numbers are not taking into account, all the other income streams and expenses, for RCA overall. This is sort of just tied to our, expenses and income from our CCA program. If we were to say yes to nuclear, we saw that as being something that the board could leverage in two different ways potentially. One would be just to reduce costs, to improve our financial outlook. So under scenario two, the way we would manage this is by selling off an equivalent amount of hydropower, part of that allocation variance that we also get from PG&E. And it's estimated that we could realize about $500,000 by selling off that equivalent amount of hydropower for 2025. That's kind of a loose number, because resources in our portfolio that we can sell off are not just like cash in hand. They're, it's more like owning stocks, you don't really know what it's going to trade for when it's time to unload it. But that's kind of the best estimate right now, $500,000. So you see that that lands us off $500,000 better in 2025 net revenues. Alternatively, we could look at this as, hey, this is free greenhouse gas free energy. We can use this to just add to our portfolio, not sell anything else off, so that we have lower carbon emissions overall. And as you can see in that case, it lowers our GHG intensity from 308 pounds of CO2 equivalent per megawatt hour down to 285. This is a pretty small allocation. It only would make up about 2% of our overall repower portfolio. That's the default portfolio that most of our customers have. We have that Opta Repower Plus portfolio, and this would not touch that portfolio because that's defined to just be renewable resources only, and nuclear is not being renewable. We send out that power content label once a year so people can see what was in the power mix, and it's retrospective. So the 2025 power content label won't actually be sent out until kind of third quarter of 2026. So this is just kind of a for instance of what we think that would look like. These numbers are all really speculative and preliminary because we don't really know what our portfolio will be for 2025, especially if the board does choose to revisit in the next few months, going back to our renewables procurement goals. But based on our current planning, you just see nuclear going from 0% to 2%, and the unspecified power that doesn't, the power that's not tied to a specific resource goes down by a significant. So you're probably interested to know what other community choice aggregators in the state have decided on this, and we do have fresh information on that since we talked about this a month ago. Quite a few of them: MCE serving Salona, Napa, Marin, Contra Costa; Sonoma serving Sonoma, Mendocino; Peninsula that serves San Mateo County; Ava that serves Alameda County and some Central Valley communities; the Palm Springs CCA, the Sierra Foothills one, Placer and El Dorado counties, and Santa Clara County's CCA have all voted to accept the application. We actually have an update to this that I wasn't able to get into this slide. I just learned from Faith in the last few hours that Central Coast Community Energy, which is the host CCA for the site of this project, actually is not taking the allocation. And I believe they just they are one of the only other CCAs that has a no nukes policy like our CEA, and they just deemed at staff level to not take the allocation. Other than that, we haven't heard of anybody else declining it so far.
They did say that they may reconsider it in future years. So that's not a no for all 5 years. That's a no for this first year.
Thanks, Dave. We did talk this over with the CAC and ended up it was a very, very interesting, thoughtful discussion. In the end, they had 8 votes in favor, 4 opposed, and 1 abstention. And they did also talk about the policy platform recommendations that we talked with the board about last month, and they basically were in agreement with the board's guidance on that, but they didn't want to see bringing something back to the board for consideration, as far as, policy platform recommendations that would clarify, our position on nuclear power apart from whether or not we take this allocation. So with that, we're happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Thank you, Faith. Yeah, we'll start with questions, and then I know there's some members of the public that would like to comment. So are there any questions from the board? Yeah, go ahead, Scott.
I've had a few people, ratepayers, contact me under the assumption that us accepting the power would reduce their bills.
Yeah, the way our rate design is currently done, that would not be the case, because we're just still doing the set discount relative to PG and lease rates. As we've discussed with the board, we're looking at cost of service rate setting for the future as an idea, and starting to look into that. And there would be, potentially under a cost of service rate setting model, a bit more of a direct linkage between these kinds of decisions and the rates that our customers take. It would just be tied to PG anymore. So it's something to consider, but I don't think that we're going to have that in place, on the timeline that it would impact the 2025 decision.
Okay, real quick though, if we were to pass this along to ratepayers, what would be the hypothetical savings to them? That's a tough question, but I'm saying that for the public because I got hammered on this, and I would like people to understand if we were to pass it along, what would that look like?
Sure. Well, I think there would be some discretion on how that $500,000 savings that I talked about gets allocated. We always talk about the balance between customer rate affordability and building reserves and how we really want our portfolio to be. So, I know the board talked last time about, directing the savings to, renewable resources that would be part of what eventually replaces the applicant. And so that's one direction to go. The rate savings are another. So if the board decided to focus on rate savings and directed staff to push that money towards rate savings, then we'd have that $500,000. That's a pretty small rate savings across, 60,000 customers in those.
Thank you.
We don't know what the increase is gonna be to the rate payers, correct? I mean, we have no idea because you said that the cost is going to be passed on whether we accept the application or not. And it hasn't been determined yet what that increase will be.
Yeah, I don't think we know the exact numbers for how much.
And if we were to use that $500,000 estimate, we're talking about an $8 annual savings per customer if we were per year, not per bill, for a whole year, $8.
Well, you may have answered it, but since we don't know what the rates will be in the rates of set for the future, but I am wondering what customers have been charged, whether it's a fixed fee on as part of their bill, or is it just folded in with other rates? What is the cost right now that people are paying for? Because you mentioned that we've already been paying for it, right? As customers.
Yeah, and unfortunately, it's not like called out as an individual line item. Like there is a nuclear decommissioning line item on customer bills. But like this will be folded into this public purpose charge that is a mishmash of a bunch of different things. So it won't be like clear visibility to a customer how much my bill is paying for. It
will just say that their procurement costs on the bills. Already payers bills, it would all be into procurement costs for the energy.
Yeah.
I believe it's going to be the public.
Yeah, so it is, and that's one of the unfortunate, not very transparent portions of this, is that it is lumped in the public purpose charge, which is, wildfire hardening, energy efficiency programs, and to really pull that out, I don't even think us as a CCA have full views into those line items. That, I think at some point it's like the CPC has to ask the IOU to pull those out individually. I think we'll have a better idea when we know the exact that's allocations. So
Yeah,
It's another way PG likes to trick us. Yeah.
they
Can I
can't.
explain why I was
Yeah.
asking it? Because, you know, and I'm struggling to articulate this perfectly, but if ratepayers are required to pay for ongoing operations in one area, but they're not, but we're overtly rejecting the quote benefit that comes with it. Is there any kind of legal issue there? That's what I'm trying to understand, and I don't know if this has come up for other CCAs, whether there's any, if we're not accepting that benefit and incorporating it into what the customer receives in some way, shape, or form, but they are indeed paying for it, like, are we on the hook to provide them something of comparable value? I guess is my thinking.
So you're kind of doing a Prop 26 tax analysis. Yeah. And I don't think that's it. I don't think it would be applicable because we're talking about PG&E rates and the PG&E costs. We will have to look at this with cost of service rates that our CPA adopts. And I don't know the rate essentially next rate. When is that?
The plan is to bring before the board a solicitation, to cover third party due analysis was.
So that's where you will see what the benefits are and the cost, and then the benefits will have to flow to the ratepayers. That's a more traditional service. So your question might have more validity when we're in that world.
Because I'm thinking about like, even though we set our rates and we currently set them to be just below PG&E's, right? We're not off the hook for charging our customers for this, right? Like these elements are still something that our customers, I guess it's a question. Are we required to charge our customers for this?
Yeah, it's through the PG&E portion of the bill, so it's on the T&E side. I just want to add that they don't take a rate of return on this. They do get a volumetric performance fee that they can charge on top instead of the rate of return. And that is going to be used for programs yet to be determined that may relate to distribution and transmission infrastructure, may relate to battery storage or things administered by PG&E.
So we don't get the choice over whether I should charge them.
No, we don't, it's not on the generation side, and the price that they're charging the customer changes based on what it costs for them to maintain the facility. So, back to your point, is it a fixed charge? I don't know if it is on per bill, but per year, it's not. It's based on what it costs PG&E to maintain.
I mean, it doesn't make sense in a way that this is coming in through the distribution and transmission. So, because it seems like it's generation. But I mean, I'm just saying it doesn't make intuitive sense, but I understand what you're saying.
Just one other thing I wanted to offer in response to Director Arroyo's question. I've had some customer calls forwarded on to me, so I'm sort of in the one that's, answering questions that are kind of, above the level that our, front desk staff is prepared to handle on the nuclear question. And I have had some conversations about that, and a few people that I've talked to have just, expressed, I think they perceive it that way, that we're preventing them from getting something that they're paying for. And there's a somewhat angry radio editorial that's made on the airwaves that is the community member kind of expressing that opinion. So it's out there, correct or not.
There's a bunch of unspecified power that we get, about 30%. It's kind of like a baloney of all this different power that we're already getting. Couldn't we assume that a portion of that is already in the outlook?
Based on the current power content label, any unaccepted allocations of the power from the outlook go back to PG&E. So in the current run, not the extended operations, PG&E gets all that on their label and it's not unspecified power. In future runs, for equity reasons that unaccepted allocation does not go back to PG&E and it does just go into unspecified.
Other questions? Yeah, go ahead, yes.
Bit more than $500,000. It's, and we don't know what that could be going on. Are we thinking 450 to 550 as a window? Or could it be 200?
I think the band of error could be a little bit larger than plus or minus 10%. Jacqueline, I don't know if is that something you feel prepared to address, like kind of what the error bar might look like on that $500,000 savings that you estimated?
Yeah, I would probably put the error band a bit higher, probably plus minus 25%. The issue is that this is a product that is transacted often. And likely with this new change, it may come back to more into the marketplace. So, yeah, that's really hard. So at our last meeting, we talked a little bit about like, how could we use this money in a positive way? And I did some thinking and had some conversations with some different folks and just, because I think it was Elise that brought up the idea of like, can we spend this money on projects, our own projects, or do our own, something to be able to, because the idea in my head is like, if we want to prevent nuclear power, but the reason it's not going offline is because we haven't built enough renewables to replace it yet, then like, is it actually feasible that we could invest that money? It's $500,000 right now, but if it's $1 million next year and $1 million the year after, that starts to add up to a bit of money. Like, can we realistically invest that in some sort of local solar project? Like, does that actually make sense as a viable option, in your opinion, or in staff's opinion?
Go ahead.
I'm looking at Eileen because I feel that's kind of an ED level question because we have kind of the tripod of, building reserves and power procurement decisions. I'm more used to the power procurement like that tripod. So.
I appreciate this sentiment. I think our general purpose of investing our dollars back in the community, we're already doing that. We have our programs that we're investing. We have the feed-in tariff program where we're paying a higher rate to encourage local solar. I'm a little hesitant to do kind of one-off carve-outs of that's dependent on selling a product that we don't really, it's not like Richard said, it's not cashing in, it's like stocks. I think it should be considered as part of the bigger picture budget and what programs you want to approve for us moving forward with CCA. And it could be considered, that it helps our financial picture. So when you're making decisions at mid-year, that you decide you want to invest more in projects. I get a little uncomfortable with tying, one kind of energy related trade to an investment back in the community, because as we see from risk report to risk report, it changes. So I guess I wouldn't want that to be the basis of your decision on whether or not you accept this allocation.
Any other questions before I
have something.
Yes, so you're sorry, Elise, you're really right behind the pole for me here.
Skip asked about going back into the unspecified resource. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounded like if we don't accept this, in the future, it will not go back to PG&E, it'll go back to unspecified. And as an unspecified resource, we're gonna be getting it anyway. Or not.
So if going on to unspecified resources on the power plant label, yes, we will be getting it in that way. Assuming that there's surplus power in certain hours, there is an initiative at the CE to reform how the emissions are calculated for the power plant at Redwood. And it's not yet approved. Based on the current system, it's gonna be calculated in a different way, but potentially it could be shown as a lower emissions rate than, say, like natural gas, which is what unspecified power is calculated.
Can I don't know the answer to this question. Can I ask the question? So what they're asking isn't decided on right now, it would not be in our unspecified power. And we have the ability to make this decision each year. So, I mean, maybe a simpler way to think about it is for the year that we're making the decision, if we don't accept it, would end up in unspecified power instead of trying to predict what it's going to be the following year.
Okay, the CEC has not yet approved the option for it to go to unspecified power. So as of how it operates currently, it would just go away. Assuming that the CEC approves it, which would be coming before the allocation, then yes, it would go into unspecified power. I'm sorry, but the answer is so
Well, like everything else, yeah, we don't, there's so much we don't know, but it's just it's a little bit crazy making. Saying we don't want this because it's bad, and then there's a real good chance we're gonna do it anyway. And not have any of the financial benefit. So I think the whole process is a little bit crazy making. Anyway, my head hurts, but I get it.
Just one thought on that is just that 2025 is the last year, but that will even matter because 2026 and beyond will have no specified power in our portfolio anymore. You've seen the graphs and plans, so it was supposed to actually be 2025 until we had to dial in procurement a little bit, but in 2026 onwards, it'll all just be renewable and carbon free, and then 2030 renewable according to the trajectory. So it's a very short term worry.
That's it. Thank you. That helps.
Yes, and then Frank.
So I know we're talking about, possibly 500,000, maybe, cumulatively a couple of million, depending on, a lot of moving pieces, right? I guess my question with all of that is, we deal in large dollar amounts here, so that's not a lot, as far as advancing a project, but my question is, do we struggle as an organization the way that other government agencies struggle to find and have access to funding to initiate projects, to do permitting, to do initial partnerships, to kind of do that like project generation phase, like the way I'm thinking about the housing trust fund that we're striving to set up locally is to fill those gaps in initial startup of projects and the costs associated with that early phase where you're working on something, but there's not yet a funding stream. And I'm wondering if we as an organization struggle with that type of funding and whether there's utility in having a funding source that's dedicated to like renewable projects initiation.
So the way we procure the long-term projects that we get built in Humboldt County is we're not the ones paying for the permits and all those things directly. We're going out, doing a solicitation, finding a company that wants to build a project, and then arriving at a power purchase agreement price per megawatt hour. And then they take that, they actually go out and get financing up front so they can build the project and then recoup the cost of the financing through the PPA payments that we make over 15, 20, 25 years to do that. So we're a step removed from directly having to solve those problems like cost of permitting and things like that. That's really on the developer. So I don't think that we really have direct access, with the exception of like the airport line group. It's the one project where we directly have our hands on those things, but usually we're there.
And I think, the airport microgrid is a good example, and now with the Inflation Reduction Act, a lot of the barriers for us to develop and own have been removed. But we haven't like stepped into that space yet because we're hoping through our partnership with CC Power and doing it as a group and do lessons learned reducing some of the risk to RCA as, you know, going out alone. So in the future, the answer might be yes, but I also, back to the Prop 26 question, we'll, I don't think we know, maybe one day.
And I hear your reticence to like designate the kind of earmark, funds that we are speculative and kind of moving target to a specific, you know, project or suite of projects or anything like that. But I did wonder if that was like a gap in the type of resources that we have to meet future needs. If we want to initiate more projects ourselves and kind of move in that direction. And that's like a longer term question for the board, but it does, to me, have relevance to this type of thing.
Frank, you have questions?
Yeah, the kind of back to a little bit about Sherry and it's funny that we're receiving the credit that we're getting on a distribution level versus they're charging us on a distribution level, and then we're gonna sell off generation value because we're getting the generation value. That's what I'm not getting clear.
Yeah, it's not exactly a TND like transmission and distribution charge. It's just, it appears on the PG&E part of the bill. And it's what are called the non-bypassable charges, which are the ones that everybody's on the hook for, whether you're a CCA customer or a bundled utility customer. So you have to think of it as sort of a different category of the bill from transmission, distribution, or generation. It's just the kind of other category that's the non-bypassable charges. And that's the part of your bill where you see the nuclear decommissioning and things like that are just general expenses that the CPUC is deemed they're appropriate for the utilities to collect.
So sorry, it's really not a distribution or generation charge. It's a charge they like the decommissioning thing. They're putting something on there, and then everybody in the state of California gets to pay for it. Yeah. And so when we get an allocation, what does our allocation come back to? Is it distribution allocation? We're getting this other credit that we can essentially sell off.
It's generation, so it's counting towards our portfolio, but it doesn't show up on the customer bill in any other way except for that public purpose charge line item talked about that includes this and wildfire mitigation and all that things.
Well,
Thank you.
I've said it several times. It's a twisted up, which somebody else, I think a couple said here, it's a twisted up deal with PG&E. And really the PUC is saying that they're short of power and they want power. And so we're not gonna shut it down, and we gotta figure out a way to make it pay. But when we had Robert and Eileen come down to the last city council meeting and asked them to explain this, because it was something I didn't feel that I had the right to just, because this is an issue that's going out amongst the community, public comment that we'll hear, and other parts that you're getting phone calls, different things that for me to just make this inadvertently by myself, I didn't feel right with that. And so I asked them to come down and give a presentation about this to the council and say, what's the consensus of what you want to do, rather than me just coming out with something. And so they voted in the consensus to accept the allocation due to the fact that it was receiving $500,000 back into RCA's funding that we can use. Let's throw it away and not get nothing, or let's get $500,000 to do something with to the benefit of the community. And I understand there's a part where it goes out and says, now this is 2% of your portfolio, which is nuclear, and we were never going to have nuclear. The dilemmas go on, but also I think mentioned I wasn't in the last meeting, but I heard parts of it over the phone. It was brought up that this nuclear power that's being essentially generated is never going to come into Humboldt County. You know, correct me if I'm wrong, Robert, but if I would challenge somebody to make those electrons get to Humboldt County, I think it would be virtually impossible for it to get out of where it's at and make it up the coast in the electron form. Where just like in Riddell, we're getting electrons from Humboldt Song. comes over, probably a big portion of whatever they're exporting, because they don't export what they used to export, ends up in Rio Dell, and at best it doesn't get past Fort Smith. And so when you look at the power that is being, that makes these lights go on, Rico isn't gonna come from Diablo Canyon. It's gonna go up into the same place where we get our wind power or solar power, when that comes about. It's still going up into a grid somehow, and then we get credit for it. Then we turn around and sell it and do what we do with it. And so, that's a whole dilemma with the whole power allocation. You know, rather than try to get power like a microgrid type situation. But all that aside, from babbling on forever, Ridgell did make a consensus that they wanted to accept this. And so that's what I'm bound to do. If there's a proposal to accept that. That's all.
Thank you for clarifying, because I did take it as you babbling on. It didn't bring a lot, clarify a lot of things.
Well, it's not simple. This isn't by any means simple. And the two culprits, I believe, again, somebody has to set the stage, is one, the PUC has a dilemma that they don't have. If they have another heat wave, and you've already shut down the Albuquerque, you don't get the power, and it creates a lot of power for the state of California. And then that's probably what it leaves. Then they have to find a way to charge it, so they charge San Diego. Those guys got to feel real good about it. You know, that they're getting charged for this allocation, and it's got nothing to do with it. So, welcome to PG&E and PUC.
Let's open it up to public comment. Let's hear from the public here. If you want to comment on this item, you will have 3 minutes. You can make your way to the podium. Please go to the podium.
No, registers will.
I'll postpone, nobody raises up.
I'll hold myself. Yeah, thank you. I'm Dennis Leonardi. Before I start, I want to congratulate you all for making an excellent suggestion or selection for Elizabeth for your director. She'll do an absolutely fabulous job, and I think she was on that CAC for a while and had a lot of confidence in what she had to say. Anyway, I'm glad you're not going down the rabbit hole having to make nuclear discussion whether it's good or bad or whatever. This is a simpler decision, I think, and I hope you don't overthink the thing. This is like somebody giving the family a gift to make your family better, and this is one you take. It's not a, and I was on the prevailing side of the CAC voting, but one of the things, the RC has got a good thing going. You're a young organization, doing a lot of positive stuff. You have great staff, you have great need, and a great vision. Next year, maybe it's, I don't know, I was gonna ask this question of Richard. It's this is only one reactor for a portion of the time. Next year, we maybe both reactors longer. So $500,000 this year, maybe a couple million next year. You're short on reserves, take the money, strengthen your organization, work to tomorrow. I mean, if you go this way, when we discussed it at CNC, we had red numbers that we were looking at. These numbers look better, but you make your organization stronger because people, I mean, there's always somebody's going to complain. Someone's going to pick up the phone and say, you're a dummy, you're stupid, you're doing the wrong thing on one side or the other. Your fiduciary role is to make this organization strong, live to tomorrow, and accomplish your goals. You are incrementally, there's ups and downs, but the time I've been here, you've been doing great. And this is a gift. Take the gift for what it is. You're going to get some criticism. Build your organization, build it strong, and you'll have a better future and achieve your goals. So I think you should take the allocation, take a couple lumps, but know you're doing the right things. You're building on tomorrow, and tomorrow's going to, satisfy the goals you got to set out, which are very laudable. And I think if you ask regular members of the community, they're going to tell you that. Not the complainers that sit in pajamas behind the screen, the guys that are working every day want a strong organization that delivers a quality product with qualified staff that can answer a question when you have it. So that's my recommendation, just, don't look back, take the gift, move on. Thanks.
Yes. Okay. Public comments.
I didn't want to come on this soon because I wasn't here for the last meeting. My name's Joanne McGarry. I live in Arcata. I was on a bus and a train down to Southern California and I passed the Martinez refineries and the windmills and solar panels of the Central Valley. And did see Sandrini down near Bakersfield because it was nighttime and I don't know where it is actually in Kern County, but ended up in Los Angeles where I grew up. But one of the things that really concerns me about adding nuclear energy concept to Humboldt County, the outlaw county that Brett McFarland just made a great song about, is that we can do better and different. And what always seems to be missing when I come to these meetings is the word conservation. I just came from the university and hopped on a bus to get here. And I passed all these rooms with all these screens going. And I actually tried to knock on the door of the shop center and it was locked. So I couldn't even ask a question about energy consumption at our CSU up there on the hill. And it's concerning me that we're talking about something that we can't change apparently because of the Dobbs SB bill or whatever that was passed that extends the Diablo Canyon nuclear operation. But I've been against this from the get-go in my college days at Avalonian Alliance when we went down there protesting and having Jackson Brown and all these people sing songs. And nuclear energy is not the future for me, and conservation is. And we as people in Humboldt County need to really recognize that we can do it differently, better. We don't need this blood money, in my opinion. And I was in Santa Barbara for 7 years and 5 fires, by the way, and got to know these groups in San Luis Obispo, Mothers for Peace. For years, decades, Mothers for Peace has been working to close down Diablo Canyon. And I looked at their website yesterday. Diablo Canyon is old, it's falling apart. We should not be supporting that operation in any way whatsoever. Please, Humboldt, do it differently. We don't have to go along with Marin, Sonoma, Mendocino, and all those others. For the people of the Central Coast down there where Diablo Canyon is, so many of those people do not want this operation to continue. I know the bill says it must, but we don't have to be a part of it.
Next comment, please.
Hi, I'm Deborah Dukes. I'm on the CAC. I'm on the Eureka Energy Committee, and I'm on the steering committee of 350 Humboldt. I too was in the majority of the CAC vote. I'm a retired teacher, and I don't know, some percentage of my pension comes from fossil fuel investments, which burns me up. That said, I accept that money every month, and then I spend my time volunteering to do things like this, fighting against fossil fuel. Nobody consulted me on whether we should pay for the decommissioning of Diablo Canyon. Had they asked me, I would have said no. Emphatically, I would have said no. However, I'm paying for it. And I'm as unhappy about that as I am about my CalSTRS pension being invested in fossil fuels. For the same reason, I don't think we should turn down the allocation. We're paying for it. We are not going to make a difference in how long the nuclear reactors go. We're not going to make a difference in what the PUC decides. We're not going to make any difference in what PG&E decides. I think we can take that money, just as I take my blood money, and use it in more constructive ways. I understand not taking a bucket of money, a specific bucket of money, and doing this. But I believe in what our CEA is trying to do. I also believe that it was very wise to put in with that phrase about exceptions. And I think you can come back to this yearly as things change. I too sat through all the red numbers at the CAC presentation, and I'm delighted to see they're green now. I too like red and green. But I also have seen how it's seesawed back and forth. And it's not a lot of money in terms of your budget, but you don't want it all. I don't have reservations. So I would just suggest that you take it. I like this scenario too. All other things being equal, I am against nuclear power. I would never, ever vote or do anything to prolong that. But again, nobody consulted me. And I say take the money, put it to good use, strengthen your organization, as Dennis said. Strengthen our organization. And then use that money to fight against nuclear power.
Thank you, Deborah.
All right, anybody else here in person wishing to comment?
Not seeing anybody. Is there anybody online?
Do we have Mike Wilson online? Mike, if you can hear us, you can unmute.
I am unmuted. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Wow. I really want to appreciate the board taking this time and to re-look at this issue. As many of you know, I was an alternate there last month, and we had made the decision we made based on the information given. And I wanted to, because it seemed at that time that we were moving towards denial, and I wanted to make that statement as strong as possible in relation to our policy and our practice around rejecting nuclear power in Humboldt County. But there was something that was said at that meeting from Director Scafani from Blue Lake that I had to think about sort of the next day as I was driving to somewhere out in the desert somewhere, about taking that resource and using it to create renewable capacity in Humboldt County. And I thought that was an interesting concept because it seems like that the whole reason why we were in this position is because there wasn't enough renewables capacity to replace Diablo Canyon. And I think that's a real thing. And so I do think that if the board decides today to take this allocation, I think that there could be policy created that could move it in that direction. I do understand the unease of interim executive director Verbeck about that policy implication and about sort of the bucket and where it might go. I think that that's a reasonable conversation that the board could have in the future, and maybe not necessarily in this moment. But I do think that that resource can be done in a way that's financially positive for the customers in the long term, creates reliability and a more robust system locally. It could include, as brought up, conservation and those sort of things. But anyways, it's bringing together a direction from this, which also creates in and of itself a statement, and could also be created and could include a challenge to other CCAs to do something similar, that where if they're feeling unease in this, that they too could also move to use this resource in a way to create more renewables. Again, conservation, I think, is something that also could be looked at. And so I just wanted to put out those thoughts, and I am just so thankful for the really robust discussion and the thoughtfulness from everybody in the community on this really important issue. And those are my comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Anybody else on?
Yes, we have John Rutter. John, you can unmute.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my name is John Rutter. I'm a student at HSU, and as a, well, as a customer of the RCEA, I believe that you should accept the allotment. I am very pro-nuclear, though I also understand people's hesitancy to accept it. Regardless, accepting it will be beneficial, as you've seen from the expected increase in revenue for the group, as you can easily invest that into, as many people have suggested, into renewable energy for the community, and thus making us more self-reliant and hopefully getting more customers away from PG&E. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
That's it. All right, I will bring it back to the board for any further discussion, questions, comments. Motions, questions, comments, all those things. Go ahead.
A couple of comments. I am leaning in favor of accepting it, and it's not because I am pro-nuclear. And I think, you know, this is the third meeting where we've had a chance to kind of talk about it. I missed the last one, but my feelings are similar to the first time that we brought this up, but a little more nuanced. And I appreciate that there was discussion of having, since the you know, the risk management policy really is so slim when it comes to nuclear. It just says we won't take nuclear power. There's no rationale given. There's no additional policy statement associated with that. So it sounds like one of the recommendations was, you know, to especially something that the CAC liked to see was an additional policy statement around nuclear, and I think that would behoove us to develop that. You know, that we oppose, and to be overt about opposition to development of new nuclear power generation facilities and the desire to see responsible disposal. And I think we all know there is no responsible disposal option. So certainly I at least don't want to see an additional nuclear power development. But that said, you know, I think if we add a little information to that, so it's very clear and we're signaling to potential future developers that that's not something that we, you know, support, that adds a little to it. It's nice to see, honestly, where the other CCAs landed. I find it, you know, I think they're all probably going through much of the same conversation, and I find it, you know, helpful to know kind of where they're at. I do think if we were to accept it, that in this particular instance, it would behoove us to try to keep those funds that are generated from this whole transaction somehow separate for the purpose of making a decision as a board about how that should work. Whether it's investment in local microgrids or matching funds for other locally owned and operated projects that maybe we are the leader of, rather than a private, you know, company, or meeting these new financial security requirements that we just heard about, where there's a lot of uncertainty. So, you know, I think there's probably many good uses, but my thinking is to develop that policy statement in pretty short order and determined to keep those funds somewhat separate so that our board can decide how to use them.
All right, other comments? Oh, yes. I looked away.
No, I have a lot to say, but I'm trying to distill it down. I mean, I appreciate the CAC. I appreciate all you've done to mull this over and recommend approval. You know, I'll go back to some of my comments from last time, and you know, calling this a clean energy benefit, I struggle with that. Actually, I don't struggle with it. I disagree with that. It's something that produces waste that lasts forever, essentially. I understand we have a fiduciary responsibility, but that said, you know, fiduciary responsibility is what gave us PFAS and DDT in the corporate interest of making money, right? They do things that are their fiduciary responsibility as a corporation, which leads to all kinds of horrible things being left behind for us to deal with. So, you know, I get, you know, thinking of this as in the short term, Like, if anything, looking at this annually. That's the only way I would agree to something like this. It's just a struggle thinking about, accepting something that will have forever, just nuclear waste. So, but I appreciate staff and what they've brought, forward and the discussion about it. But yeah, I would like to see the benefits, go to renewable and renewable energy, procurement, development. I know we can't really look at it that way necessarily, but we should be thinking of that so that we can get out of this as quickly as possible. This acceptance of nuclear power. Now, I just want to say, when we make this decision, we be thinking of what are our ratepayers going to think when they see nuclear on the bills. I think the majority of our population doesn't like it in some fashion. It's the Faustian bargain, maybe. I don't know if that's the proper term for it. I'm accepting something because there's money there. I have a hard time with it, but I'm happy to entertain a motion that entails all that, because I think we need to do more than what is before us right now, more nuance and more something that we can look at yearly. Think about it.
And yeah, because you and I were both of the anti-nuclear persuasion last time, and that's kind of where I'm sitting, is that like I don't really see a direct way to specifically take this money and counteract the things that we want to see go away, like nuclear power. And I really appreciate what you said, Scott, just about the understanding that we obviously have a fiduciary obligation to care about the financial health of our organization, but also, as all elected officials and people sitting on this board, that we also, from a policy standpoint, need to like uphold the values of our organization and our communities that we represent as well. And, it might just more be a uniquely Arcata thing, but I have gotten a lot of feedback of, I'm so glad you guys didn't accept that nuclear allocation, and maybe, in other communities, you guys aren't hearing that after your last meeting, but that might be a uniquely Arcata thing, or at least the people that I talk to and work with a lot in Arcata. So, and really, not seeing a direct route, or at least in this, particularly recommended motion of, moving the way that I think we need to, which is like, how can we become more independent from G&E, for example, have more of our own resiliency and independence with energy, where we're not reliant on resources like the Otto Canyon, and being able to bring online our own resources and projects locally. So I would be inkling to support in the back of my head if there was, some clear direction that money could really be spent locally in our community and the savings to be brought to us. But, that's not necessarily what I'm hearing as a possibility. So that's where I'm sitting.
Yeah. So 20 years ago, I was in Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. I would go to Avila Beach all the time. I knew the nuclear power plant was across the mountain, and I was fearful of it. I just hated knowing that. And at that time, I had no idea what I wanted to do in my career, so I got into renewable energy. And 20 years later, I'm amazed about how much solar and battery storage is getting put on the grid in 2024 right now. I mean, what we're doing right now, we're driving down the costs significantly to the point where nuclear, we'll not even talk about nuclear in 2030. It's a dead technology. So, if I vote today positive for nuclear, it's not that I'm supporting nuclear in any way. It's knowing that there is a future ahead of us, and it's going to be solar and storage. So, yeah, that's all I have to say. Yeah.
More comments, motion, I think. Yep. We gotta figure out an ideal configuration. Go ahead, Skip, please.
Would just like to say, I am where I was That's not. I don't like it, but we should accept it. The CPUC and the legislature, I think, put this on that. I also think we should wait until mid-year and specifically look at this allocation to reduce greenhouse gases and support our community.
Thank you, Steve.
I would just say one, I mean, I've heard what Arlene said about, isolating the savings or potential savings for any particular purpose. And I suppose 6 months from now or a year from now, we can look back and say, oh, it looks like that situation, you know, if we were to accept this, that we did save X number of dollars or whatever. I mean, we don't have to decide today or next month or the month after what we're gonna do with the money we don't have yet. But a year from now, we can look back and maybe have a more concrete idea of what that was and decide to put it toward development of local generation or whatever. So I'm still in favor of however that could make sense, and the logistics of it. If there's a way to do it, you know, at some point down the line where we actually can identify that money, and put it toward a purpose of local generation. That's still my preference.
Can I make a motion that might work for us? First, I know I was not at the last meeting, but I am a CAC liaison, so I did get the presentation with them. Was part of or listened to their intense discussions that they had. Staff did a great report, the CAC committee does amazing at what they do. I would like to make a motion to accept the nuclear allocation scenario number 2, with the caveat that we review this every year. And that when we review it next year, we will have a knowledge of the funds that were received, and we can make a decision moving forward how we might want to allocate those funds.
I would second that.
Right, we have a motion, it's like on the Barnally, did you want to make a last comment on that?
Was the last part of it something about a policy statement for the risk management policy? Clarifying our position on here.
I thought that was something different, or is that part of this?
We got direction in last meeting to bring, and it's our policy platform to bring that back to the board, and so we already got that direction.
Thank you. Would you be willing to add to the motion that so scenario 2 uses that allocation to reduce costs so that cost savings be kept separate to the extent possible so that the board can determine how we want to utilize those funds? Rather than just seeing an overall cost savings, that's just sort of
well, I think we have to wait to see what we're going to receive, because it's unknown.
Yeah,
whatever that is.
Right.
I think what I'm hearing is a report out of like, what exactly those cost savings were for that from that transaction.
Is that?
All right. We have a motion by Director Mobley and a second by Director Sapani. We'll do a show of hands vote. So all in favor, aye. Please raise your hand. All right, and it's great. It's not about it. Oh, man, am I gonna do your favorite thing? Yeah. Yeah, that's what people from our, do. All right, so we have, you getting that count? It's everybody but me. Then one opposed. And yeah, one debate. And so that motion carries. Sarah. All right. What were you? Were you asking something?
He was asking.
Frank was sort of the.
All right. We're done with that. Okay, that's gonna move us out of CCE business. There is no new CCE business, and that is gonna take us into there's no old business and new business, 9.1, which is gonna be a summary of RCEA related climate action plan implementation measures.
Sarah, I would like to thank staff for
Yes.
bringing this back so many times and clarifying so much information. It was very helpful.
All right. And yeah, and between us and the CAC too, I'm sure. Yeah, you got to see it all. All right, so Faith, you're gonna come back up and tell us about the cap. Thank you.
Hello. So RCEA has been engaging very closely with the county through the drafting of the cap. We have, before you have a staff report that reviews a list of the measures in which RCEA is named. We are in a lead role for those measures. After the remaining measures, we are in a support role collaborating with other agencies. We are named in quite a few of the measures you may notice the majority of them. But we are excited to continue collaborating with the county on this. From what we hear, there's going to be an implementation committee being housed at HBOS, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Really quick, we wanted to just provide a summary from RCA's standpoint of the measures that will directly impact work that we do. Because we know that you're seeing this from your member agencies, that, you know, maybe not through the RCA board of director lens. It's our understanding that the regional, I call it climate committee, but I think I have that wrong. It's RCC. Our RCC regional climate committee. Yeah. Will really house, you know, the coordination of the implementation measures. And, you know, RCA is listed as participating on that committee, and just wanted to let the board know that we've been really tracking, engaged, providing input and edits. And, we feel that many of the measures really are in line with our existing strategic plan, repower plan, and we're looking forward to seeing this adopted and working towards it with our partners.
Any questions on anything in the staff report? I know all of us probably do see this a lot at our other agencies and get to be deep in the info. All right, then is there any public comment on this summary? Thank you. Thanks. Not seeing any online. All right, we will move then to staff reports, 10.1, and I don't think you have anything to report to us.
So just wanted to take this opportunity to remind the board that we're meeting at different times for November and December because of the holidays. So if it's not on your calendar, reach out to us and we can hold those times. You're looking at me.
I know, aren't they?
Yeah. November is a week early. And the
it's like for Wednesday. Oh wait, not Wednesday.
Yeah.
Why?
We made that decision. We sent out a poll when we were picking the dates, and the third Thursday conflicted with multiple board directors, yeah. So we set these dates.
So both myself and my alternate will be at a conference.
Okay.
That week. I set that in a poll, but.
So that
we already get it in account.
The same time, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
What is it?
Wednesday.
That's our first equity educated meeting with like our new like manager staff that we just hired, and then I have a council meeting immediately following that we are starting at 5, so I just don't think it's feasible for me to meet.
I
If
guess
Scott is available,
we'll
share it up.
if we don't have county and city, will we still have a quorum?
Is everyone
My,
out?
my alternate might be able to go, but again, we have a council meeting, so she would have to be here.
We would not. Do we want to consider setting a different date of the meeting?
Yeah.
Is that,
So,
is there a way we can task us to setting a different date and we'll set it at the meeting?
yes.
Okay. So that we can
Yeah.
send out, a new poll. And, so let's, so that's for November, well, TBD, and then December. You, already, December 18th, Wednesday.
The exact same conflict, but less of an important meeting that I could probably miss that one.
That was 2:30.
You might Well, it's Equity Arcata. Is the con that I went.
Did you say you sent this out in January? That's
We
probably when
adopted
investors
the date
are-
in January, so we might have.
Can we just do a new poll for both?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So can we take those off? Is it safe to do that?
No.
Okay.
Leave it in case, there isn't a better option.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I just want to put out there for the poll making, that the Wednesday before each of those dates is wide open for me, and we have conflict with the equity.
Yeah.
And doesn't put,
But, so like December 11th and November 13th, but that would mean that we would be, anyway, I don't know if that works for others, but.
yeah. Okay, pushing it up a little bit. so.
That's helpful. Thank you.
All right.
And then, oh, sorry, I just want for a quick update, yesterday. Myself and two other RCA staff members, along with Shots Energy Research, senior staff visited Hoopa and met with the Hoopa Valley Tribal Council, and then we went from there to Happy Camp, and that was another group. Tribal Council to discuss the terrace project and introduce ourselves and do a little FaceTime in front of the Tribal Councils. Both tribes are very interested in membership of RCEA. And so I'll be following up with engaging with them on what that means and bringing that back to me.
Okay, is that it? That's it. Cool. And then any future agenda item folks are interested in? If not. Oh, is that a hand? Okay, so there's a flag. We are adjourned.